In 1918, the turn is divided into three main phases: the command phase, the tactical phase, and the end phase. In step one of the command phase, we determine the initiative player. The initiative player is the player who acts first in each of the steps and phases of the turn. For the purposes of this demonstration scenario, the French are playing as the attackers and the Germans are playing as the defenders. This means that the French automatically have the initiative for the first game turn. Additionally, because this is the first game turn, we skip the roll for reserve step. We're also going to skip step C for this first turn and come back to it in turn 2, just to keep things simple for now. The last step of the command phase is the command action step. In the command action step, players take it in turns, starting with the initiative player, to carry out command actions. There are 4 command actions available: issue an order, adopt a stance, move a senior leader, or pass. Issuing orders is the bread and butter of 1918. It's what your senior and junior leaders are here on the battlefield for. There are 4 orders you can issue: fire, advance, at the double, or stand to. Knowing which order to issue when can make a huge difference to how the battle plays out. So far so good, however, this is where friction starts to come into the battle. A senior leader can issue an order without having to take any kind of test to a unit which is within their command range, which is 12 inches. This means that for units near your senior leaders, it's fairly simple to keep them moving forwards. However, if the unit has suffered one or more pins, then the senior leader is going to have to take a command test. Okay, let's see how this plays out on the table now. We'll start placing orders, starting with the French. Play begins with a French fire order. The Germans then counter with a fire order of their own. You can't quite see him, but the senior leader is just slightly on the edge of the map here. I'll mark him with a triangle. At this point, both players are trying to win the firefight. The French player therefore puts down another fire order, this time on the sniper. The German player now wishes to issue a fire order to the machine gun team. To do so, they're going to have to take a command test. This is because the distance between the senior leader and the machine gun is over 12 inches. The command test is taken on 2d6. The machine gun team has an initiative of 7+, and therefore a 9 is sufficient to pass the test. The French player now wishes to issue an at the double order to the chasseur section behind the hedge, the idea being to flank around the German position. Luckily, the chasseur section is still within 12 inches of the sergeant, who's located in the woodland, and does not have to take a test. The French player then issues a fire order to the 75mm field gun. The German player then issues an advance order to the light machine gun section in the ruined woodland, in the hope that they can get a better firing position. The French player then issues an at the double order to the grenadiers section waiting in the woodland, hoping to get forwards and ready into bomb range for a future turn. Lastly, the German player issues an order to the 7.5cm Minenwerfer located just to the right of the ruined woodland. Now that all units on both sides have either adopted a stance or received an order, it's time to end the command phase and move into the tactical phase. As the French player still has the initiative, they get to choose the first unit to activate in the tactical phase. There are some ways they could have lost the initiative during the command phase. For example, if they've rolled a double 1 on one of their command tests, or the German player had rolled a double 6. The French player chooses to activate the automatic rifle squad located in the woodland to lay down some fire. The unit had the fire order, which means that it can choose its target and does not have to engage the closest target. The French player now resolves the shooting sequence with the unit. First off, they check the range and line of sight. Both the Lebel rifle and the Xiao light machine gun have a range of 24 inches. The section is also armed with 3 VB rifle grenade launchers, which have a range of 6 to 18 inches. The French player decides to roll for the 2 Xiao light machine guns first, each have an attack value of 3, meaning 66 a roll to hit. The French player then applies any modifiers to the dice roll. In this case, the only one it's going to apply is that for long range, which is a -1, because the target unit is over 12 inches away, which is over half the range of the Xiao. The French infantry section has a firing skill of 4+, meaning that once we apply the -1 modifier, a 5 is going to be required to score a hit. In this case, the French player has scored 1 hit. When a weapon hits its target, it inflicts pins. The number of pins inflicted is equal to the number of hits, capped at the weapon's pin attribute. In this example, the Xiao only scored 1 hit, so despite its pin attribute of 2, only 1 pin is inflicted on the German infantry section. The infantry section must take 1 save for each hit. In this case, it scored 1 hit, so that's 1 save. There are 2 potential modifiers to veterancy saves: cover and strike. The unit is in light cover, giving it a +1 bonus, improving its save. The Xiao does not have a strike value because it is small arms, marked with a dash. It does not therefore provide any bonus or penalty. After modifiers, the German player therefore needs to roll a 3+. They roll 1d6 and score a 6. Success. The German section has the elite 6+ keyword. This means that whenever the section receives any pins, it rolls 1d6 for each pin. Any results which equal or exceed the value, in this case 6+, remove a pin. The German player rolls off screen, it does not score a 6, therefore no pins are ignored and the unit takes a pin as normal. The French player now continues resolving the unit shooting. There are 5 models armed with rifles in the section. Rifles have an attack attribute of 1 and therefore the French player rolls 5 more d6. Rifle weapons ignore the long range penalty so long as the model firing them remains stationary. This means the rifles will hit on 4s. The French player scores 3 hits. The German player must now take 3 saves. Like before, they roll 1d6 per save. Light cover still applies, and therefore they save on a 3+. The German section suffers 1 casualty. Because the French section has already inflicted 1 pin, and rifles only have a pin attribute of 1, we don't need to worry about inflicting any more pins because the unit has already received 1 pin from this section's attacks. Lastly, the French section is armed with 3 VB rifle grenade launchers. These attack using the bracketing fire sequence, which is slightly different to the standard shooting sequence, and represents weapons which need to range in on their target. When resolving bracketing fire, you have to nominate a target model in the enemy unit. This has to be the closest enemy model. The French player then rolls 1d6 to hit. This counts for all 3 grenade launchers in the unit. The long range penalty is in effect. The French player needed a 5 and therefore 2 is a failure. This means the attacks have fallen short or overshot their target. To determine how far they've fallen short or overshot, we roll 1d8. A score of 1 to 4 indicates that the shot has fallen short. A score of 5 to 8 indicates that the shot has overshot the target. In this case, we've overshot by 3 inches, therefore we place the fire mission marker 3 inches behind the target model. The VB rifle grenade launcher has the blast 1 inch keyword. This means it affects a radius of 1 inch. However, because the French section is attacking with 3 of the same weapons together, we add the blast values of those weapons together. This means that the weapons have become blast 3 inches. Any enemy units within 3 inches of the fire mission marker are caught in the blast. For each unit caught in the blast, roll the dice indicated by the weapon's attack attribute. In this case, the VB's attack attribute is d3. Again, because we're resolving 3 of the same weapons together, we add the attack value of those weapons together. So, the French player rolls 3d3, resulting in 6 hits. This number is then halved because the VBs did not score a direct hit with their initial bracketing roll. The pin attribute of the VB is 1. Because the German section has already suffered 1 pin as a result of the same French section's attacks, no further pins are applied. The German player must now take 3 saves, 1 for each hit. The VBs have the indirect keyword, representing their parabolic trajectory. This reduces the bonus a unit gains from cover by 2. Therefore, in this case, the light cover is ignored and the German section saves on their base veterancy attribute of 4+. 2 saves are failed, inflicting 2 casualties on the German section. The German player now removes the casualties from the French section's attacks, 3 in total. A good result for the French player. Because the German section suffered casualties equaling or exceeding 25% as a result of the attacks of a single enemy unit, it must take a morale test. A morale test is a veterancy test on 1d6. The German section has a veterancy of 4+. The German player rolls a 2, a failure. This is bad news. However, because a German senior leader is within 12 inches of the section, this dice can be re-rolled. The German player re-rolls the dice and scores a 6, a success. The German sergeant has successfully cajoled his men back into the fight. It is now the end of the French section's activation. Okay, so now that we've worked through an example of the shooting sequence and the bracketing fire sequence, we will crank up the pace on this video and run through some of the shooting a bit more quickly. So, the German player chooses to activate their machine gun section next. Because it has a fire order, it can pick its target freely, and the German player chooses to target the French grenadier section lurking in the woods. Because the machine gun is in contact with the hedge, it can ignore up to 2 inches of the terrain for the purposes of shooting. This is called the fire positions rule. The machine gun is more than 24 inches away from the closest model in the enemy unit, meaning it is at long range. The machine gun rolls 8 attack dice, needing 5s to hit. It only scores 2 hits. However, this is enough to put 2 pins on the French section, resulting in the pin status. When pinned, a unit immediately loses any order it might have. Instead, it must adopt a stance. Stances are more limited than orders, reducing the movement and fire capabilities of the unit. There are 2 stances to choose from: take cover and regroup. The French player decides that the grenadier section will regroup. The French player then rolls 2 veterancy saves, 1 for each hit. The French section is obstructed by the woods, which is obstructing area terrain. Woods are light cover, conferring a +1 bonus to the section's saves. The French player fails one save and the section loses one model. The French player may choose which model to remove. The French player then chooses to activate their 75mm field gun. The field gun has the fire order and targets the German section which has already come under fire. The field gun is within half range and does not therefore suffer the long range penalty. The field gun attacks using HE, that is high explosive shells, which use the bracketing fire sequence. The French player rolls to hit, needing a 4. Unfortunately for them, they miss. However, because it's a bracketing weapon, they roll a d8 and this results in a 3-inch overshoot. The French player rolls low and the German unit suffers only one hit. The German section suffers one pin and after rolling for its elite keyword, fails to cancel the pin again. The German player must now take saves. The gun's HE shells, which have a strike of -1, are enough to offset the +1 bonus from the light cover. Ultimately, this results in a casualty. The German section then gains a bracketed marker. This will make it easier for the field gun to hit the section next turn with a direct hit, and represents the crew walking the rounds onto the target. The German section now has 2 pins, meaning that it is pinned. Like the French unit before it, it loses its fire order and must adopt a stance. The German player chooses a take cover stance to try and reduce the incoming damage in future activations. It is now the German player's activation. They choose to activate the 7.5cm Minenwerfer, which has a fire order. Because it has the indirect keyword, the Minenwerfer can attack units it cannot draw line of sight to, so long as at least one friendly model in the same force can draw line of sight. The German player selects the French sniper team as their target. The last thing they need is him taking potshots at their leader after all. The target is at long range, as the Minenwerfer has a range of 48 inches, and so a 5+ is needed. The German player rolls a 6, a direct hit. They then roll for the number of hits, scoring 3. Because the Minenwerfer has a pin attribute of 2, this is capped at 2 pins. The target unit therefore becomes pinned and loses its fire order. The French player then takes 3 saves, needing 4s once all the relevant factors have been netted off against each other. The sniper team suffers 1 casualty, reducing its crew by 1. In this case, removing a model as they have been separately based. The unit also gains a zeroed marker, in this case represented by a shell burst. When a target has been zeroed, re-attacking it with the same weapon will result in an automatic hit. Because the Grenadier section has at least one model within 3 inches of the target model in the sniper team, it is also caught in the blast from the Minenwerfer and suffers 1 hit. The French player makes the save on a 6, but the unit still suffers another pin as a result. The Grenadier section is now suppressed. Suppressed units suffer all the penalties of being pinned and under fire, but also cannot receive fresh orders or shoot at all until they have recovered at least 1 pin. The German player must now activate the light machine gun section. This is because a player must activate all of their units with orders before activating any of their units with stances, and the only other remaining German unit yet to activate has a stance. The LMG section has the advance order. This allows it to move and shoot, albeit with a -1 to hit penalty. In 1918, all infantry models have a base movement of 6 inches. The ruined wood counts as open terrain for infantry models, so no penalties to movement apply. The German player tries to place all models within 2 inches of the edge of the area terrain so as to benefit from the fire positions rule. Otherwise, some models may be obstructed when shooting. The German section opens fire with their rifles. However, they need 6s to hit due to the advance order on long range and no hits are scored. Note that the model armed with the light machine gun in the section will not be able to shoot this activation. This is because the German MG0815 has the cumbersome keyword, which means it cannot move and fire. This represents the unwieldy weight of the weapon, which was poorly regarded by German troops in combat. It is now the French player's activation. Only the chasseur section still has an order, so this must be the next section to activate. The section has the at the double order, meaning it can only use the run or assault action. With no assault targets within 18 inches, it must use the run action. To run, the French player chooses a target location to run to, in this case the hedgeline opposite. They then roll 2d6 and add this to the unit's base movement. They roll a 7, meaning that the unit runs a total of 13 inches towards the target location. The hedge is difficult terrain for infantry, which must use 2 inches of movement for each 1 inch of movement when traversing through this terrain. This knocks a couple of inches off the move, but it's still enough. The German rifle section is pinned, which limits their options. However, in this case, the German senior leader is nearby and can potentially intervene and help. The German player activates the senior leader, who then uses a senior leader action. There are 3 senior leader actions available, and they can only be used by senior leaders. In this case, the German player selects Follow Me. The senior leader must take a veterancy test to proceed, needing a 3+. The German player rolls a 6, a success. The German senior leader then resolves a bonus move action to move into coherency with and join a friendly unit. The friendly unit then removes 1 pin, may select a new order or stance, and then, if it hasn't already activated, activates. In this case, the rifle section is no longer pinned, and therefore resolves the fire order, shooting its rifles at the French section opposite. They manage to score 2 hits, inflict 1 pin, and 1 casualty, which the French player then removes. This concludes the Germans' activation for the tactical phase. The French player then activates the sniper team. It has the regroup stance, which means it can resolve either the rally or fallback action. The French player chooses to rally, which allows the unit to remove 1 pin for each leader model present. The sniper team has the weapons team unit type, which means it always counts as containing 1 junior leader. It therefore removes 1 pin. Regrouping units can also shoot, but can only hit on 6s, regardless of any modifiers. The French player rolls to hit with the scoped lapel rifle and gets a 5, a miss. It looks like the Germans managed to shake his aim after all. The German player has no units left to activate, and therefore passes. The French player activates the grenadier section in the woods. The unit has the regroup stance and uses the rally action. Because the French file closer sergeant, the second senior leader in the French force, joined this unit during deployment, the unit may remove 2 pins, i.e. 1 for the junior leader and 1 for the senior leader. The section then shoots its rifles at the German LMG section. They need 6s to hit, and no modifiers can be applied. They score 1 hit, which inflicts 1 pin, and the elite unit does not manage to ignore it. The German player then successfully makes their veterancy save, and the section takes no casualties. Both players have now activated all of their units, and the tactical phase comes to an end. Both players now resolve the end phase, working through each step together in turn. The first step is test morale for wavering units. Units gain the wavering status when they fail a morale test. Because there are no wavering units in play, both players skip this step this turn. Next, players check the overall morale of their force. Because no units have failed morale tests or been destroyed, neither force is yet in danger here. Next, players score victory points. In this demonstration scenario, the French are the attackers and must capture the ruined woodland occupied by the German force. They currently have no models on the objective, so no victory points are scored. Players then check if the scenario end conditions have been met. This scenario will run for 3 turns, and both players have at least 1 model on the table, so play continues. In Step E, both players test for unit recovery. Each unit with 1 or more pins may take a recovery test by testing the veterancy attribute. If successful, the unit may remove 1 pin or the wavering status. If they wish, both players can resolve this step simultaneously to speed up play. Units which have only 1 pin, and which were not the subject of an attack this turn, and which are more than 12 inches away from enemy models, automatically pass this recovery test. Units in fortified cover, or within command range of a senior leader, may re-roll failed recovery tests. The French and German players run through their units on the table, taking veterancy tests and removing pins. With some good rolling, most pins are cleared from both sides. Next, players check to see if the wind changes direction. The wind is important when making gas attacks and when using smoke and illumination rounds. The player with initiative rolls 1d8. They roll a 7, which means the wind changes direction and is now blowing northwest. In Step G, the players roll for each gas, smoke or illumination marker in play, removing it on 5+. They add a cumulative +1 modifier to the dice roll for each successive turn the marker has been in play. Because there are currently no markers in play, there's no need to roll. In Step H, players may roll a veterancy test for each weapon or gun team in play which has a fire or the Overwatch order. If the unit is successful in this test, they can retain the order for use next turn. This represents the prerogative for these units to keep laying down supporting fire in the absence of further orders. Lastly, players clean up the play area, removing any unnecessary tokens or markers, ready for a new turn. Okay, and that's the end of turn 1. In the next video we will cover turn 2 and introduce some of the game's more advanced rules such as gambits, vehicles and artillery.